Hey everyone, I'm Allison Resendiz, Managing Editor for Food Service Equipment Reports. Thank you so much for joining us today. In just a few minutes, we're going to present your guide to avoiding costly cooler meltdowns. But first, I would like to introduce you to Eric Koenig, Vice President of Brand Strategy and Communication with Partstown, which is sponsoring today's webinar. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Allison. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to welcome you all to a great webinar. There's going to be a lot of really interesting information to share with you today. But as many of you might know, Partstown and Heritage Parts are coming together, and we're really excited about our coming together. We're working towards an October finalization date. And really, what this means for everybody on the line today is we're here to deliver 50% more inventory, better delivery, logistics, hours of operation. We're going to leverage new technology. We're going to continue to innovate and innovate at a faster pace and still offer you the same customer experience that you've been used to from both Partstown and Heritage. So that personal service from Heritage, the great technology from Partstown, all combined to deliver a better experience day in and day out for our customers. So again, Allison, thanks for hosting the webinar and look forward to hearing from everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eric. Now I'd like to introduce everybody to Haley Elting. She is the Business Development Manager for Traulson. Haley has been a part of the ITW Food Service Equipment Group since 2017. From day one at Traulson, she has been the company representative to the K-12 market and actively participates in the School Nutrition Association events at the state and national level. Haley attended Baylor University, where she received a bachelor's degree in forensic science and an MBA from the Texas Women's University. Haley is going to lead us through some really important refrigeration tips, as well as the benefits of blast chillers. And then we're going to hold a question and answer session at the end. So definitely please be sure to submit your questions through the Q&A widget, and we'll be sure to answer just as many as we can in the time allowed. Also, I wanted to be sure to let you know that the PowerPoint presentation today will become available so you can reference it later. Haley, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Allison. I guess, do you want me to go ahead and take it from here?
Yes, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Great. So I bet many of you are wondering how I went from studying forensic science to selling refrigerators. That's for another webinar we'll discuss. But right now, we'll look at some tips and tricks for refrigeration and keeping your unit in good working order. We'll also look at some sanitation solutions that Traulson offers and that may be available in the market as well. And then we'll take a look at some blast chilling, just some information, some ROI information on that and how it might be able to help you with your kitchen processes. So most people don't realize that refrigeration is really one of the only, if not the only piece of kitchen equipment to run in the kitchen 24/7. It often goes ignored unless or until something goes awry. During this brief webinar, we're going to look at the steps for properly shutting down and restarting Traulson refrigeration equipment. We're going to discuss some preventative maintenance tips and look at some sanitation solutions that we currently offer. So some customers are accustomed to shutting down all equipment periodically. In my experience, this ranges from, every, one day a week through the weekend, like some schools do, or yearly for several weeks at a time, again, like the K-12 market does. Shutting down Traulson refrigeration equipment involves 8 individual steps. I would imagine many of these steps do apply to other equipment as well, but I'm just going to talk about Traulson since I'm an expert in Traulson. So you can see the first 4 listed here on this slide. So for number 1, first and foremost, you want to disconnect the power supply when shutting down equipment. You want to do this when shutting down or when performing maintenance, really. This prevents any electrical damage or injury that may occur when performing the rest of the mothballing steps that we're going to discuss here in a few moments. The next step that you want to do is you want to inspect those door gaskets. This is an activity we will discuss more than once during this webinar. However, when shutting down equipment, this is the perfect time to check for any damage or dirt, for cleaning. And if there are any issues found, go ahead and address them by cleaning the gasket or replacing the gasket. Next, you want to remove interior arrangement. So this can be anything from just your standard kind of epoxy coated shelves, tray slides, anything in the interior, including the pilasters, you want to go ahead and take out. This may not be an easy task, and it may also require tools. So if you're unsure on how to exactly do it, reach out to your manufacturer. For example, Charleston, we actually have some step-by-step guides, as well as some videos that discuss how to remove or install these interiors. So make sure to take a look at that so you don't damage them or damage the unit. So when you want to take them out, you want to wash them, but make sure you don't sanitize them, but just wash them in accordance with what the local health department determines is necessary. You don't want to sanitize them because obviously they may be made out of stainless steel or some other metal material that will corrode if exposed to cleaners that contain chlorides. And I also recommend that you air dry these so that you avoid any cross-contamination from like a towel that's been used or anything of that nature. Air drying is going to be your best bet. For the fourth step, you want to thoroughly clean the interior surfaces. You've been storing food in there, been storing drinks. I'm sure there's been spills. We want to make sure we get all of these up. It may seem intuitive to use bleach or something of that nature that you're used to using on different components within the kitchen, but you really want to avoid that when cleaning refrigeration equipment because they're constructed of aluminum or stainless steel. You really just want to use a mixture of baking soda and some hot water, warm water with kind of a soft cloth. And we put the ratio down there. It's 1 tablespoon of baking soda to 1 pint of water ratio. That should be enough solution to clean the unit and even get some hard to clean messes up without essentially damaging the material, damaging the stainless or the aluminum. Next, you want to clean the condenser coil. If there's anything to be done with refrigeration, it's to clean that condenser coil. I put a little star there on a couple of these. That just indicates this is a step that's often overlooked when shutting down equipment. A lot of, they just want to unplug it and be done with it, but there really is extra things that you should do in order to properly take care of your equipment when shutting down. So step 5, clean the condenser coil. Charleston tries to make this simple by having the coil front facing and easily accessible by just lifting up the louver rail. You want to make sure the coil is clear of dirt, debris, and grease. And we'll discuss methods of how to do this later in the presentation. For step 6, you want to check the condensate pan and remove any standing water. This should be an easily accessible tray near where the evaporator coil is housed. Of course, we all know standing water is not a good thing, whether it's for a day or especially for several weeks. You don't want stagnant water there because that's where, bacteria and fungi and all those things are going to grow. After emptying out the condensate pan, you want to go ahead and leave the doors open for the duration of the out of service time. This will allow fresh air to move throughout the cabinet and avoid unpleasant smells when it is time to restart the unit. Also, oxygen is a good fighter against, the growth of mold, bacteria, and fungi as well. And the last step is to wipe the exterior surfaces. You want to do this in a similar fashion like you did the interior of the unit. So you want to use a ratio of baking soda and hot water. Non-abrasive cleaners like Sheila Shine is a good one to use, or a stainless steel cleaner. Those are good to use, and they won't damage the integrity of the metal. And you just want to give it a nice good, wipe down, and you should be good to go. And leaving these, to settle until you're ready to use them again. So now you've shut down your equipment, but it's time to use it again, whether it's the start of the school year or maybe you had that one day off from your kitchen. So how are you going to properly actually, recommission these units? So first and foremost, go ahead and check the unit is still unplugged before beginning this process. You don't want somebody to have walked by and been like, oh, oops, I see this is unplugged and just mistakenly plugged it back in. You're going to have to do some activities that you want to avoid any injury, so make sure it's still unplugged. And so after that, the first thing, again, you want to do is check the condenser coil. This activity will be mentioned quite a bit throughout this presentation. So check the condenser coil once again. You want to make sure that this step wasn't missed during the shutdown process and cause an airflow issue upon restart. Always a good practice to be diligent about checking this coil. Depending on the length of the shutdown, it may also be prudent to clean the exterior and interior surfaces of the unit once again, like we did during the shutdown process. So, it's just sanitation is such a big issue, especially even now and in a kitchen. You would just want to avoid any additional possibility of, bacteria, mold, fungi, or anything growing like that. So especially if you had it shut down for quite a long time, like they do with schools, you want to make sure you just kind of give it a good wipe down again. Next, you want to keep checking those gaskets for any wear and tear or dirt. Go ahead and replace them or clean them if necessary, because the gasket really is a key component to proper door seal. And that proper door seal prevents warm air from the kitchen entering the cabinet and also protects the airflow inside of the cabinet. So having a good door seal is really critical for fast temperature recovery and for maintaining those safe temperatures. So after addressing the gaskets, check the door in a hole for a proper door seal. As I mentioned, the gaskets are a key component to the proper door seal, but the doors also play a part as well. So if you find that the seal is not optimal, but the gaskets look fine, their form, fit, and function is fine, the door may actually, the hinges may need to be adjusted, or we may need to look at and see if the cabinet is actually level. I find this happens on the rolling units, especially. It's very, very important that those units are installed in a level playing field so that the doors shut properly. So after you've done all that and you've checked everything, now it's time to carefully restore the power. So go ahead and plug it back in. I did want to caveat this a little bit. So what I have found, especially since the pandemic started in K through 12 and in other places too, is that people have had to rearrange their processes and rearrange how they're serving food. So for example, a large school district in Texas had to move hundreds of units of refrigeration units and milk coolers and all kinds of things to different school locations. So if you have moved the unit from its original location, you want to make sure the unit has its own dedicated outlet at its new location and that the power source meets the requirements of the compressor at the new location. Otherwise, you may risk damage to the unit, right, and compressor failure. So also want to mention, if the unit was transported on its side for any length of time, it's a good idea to leave the unit upright for up to 24 hours to ensure the system has settled. That way, again, you don't suffer any issues upon restart of the unit. And so finally, after the power has been restored, you just want to observe the unit's temperature display to make sure it has reached its desired operating temperature before placing anything inside. So with the Charleston Smart Control, you should have a good indication, hey, this is ready to go. I can go ahead and put my contents back in, or it'll notify you if something isn't right and you need to reassess the unit and see what's going on before you put your contents in there. And with that, it's time for a poll question.
Thanks, Haley. Some really good tips. I'd like everyone to participate in our first of 2 poll questions today. And please do take the time to answer it, because it'll help us figure out what issues you are dealing with the most. You can use the Q&A widget to answer the question, which is, what is your biggest challenge in shutting down, restarting equipment? Is it time, budget, lack of knowledge on proper shutdown procedures, or not having the people resources needed to do the work? And we'll just wait a few minutes while everybody casts their vote, and then we'll show you the results. Of course, Haley, after listening to your presentation just now, I bet you everybody has a good knowledge of the proper shutdown procedures.
I hope so. I hope it provides, some interesting information or important information for the future.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see the results. Looks like time is the biggest challenge in shutting down, restarting equipment. Okay. Well, that's good to know, Haley. How long does it typically take to properly shut it down?
So actually there are a couple of slides moving forward where we have kind of a time frame, but it really shouldn't.
Okay.
I think the cleaning part would probably take the most time, but it should maybe just take a couple of hours to make sure everything's shut down properly and cleaned properly.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. I'll hand the floor back over to you then.
Okay, great. So now we'll look at some preventative maintenance do's and don'ts to keep your refrigeration units in great operating condition for long-lasting equipment life. We have already mentioned cleaning the condenser coil during the shutdown and recommissioning processes, but I can't emphasize this enough. It's important to do this periodically while the unit is in operation. How often really depends on your kitchen environment. For example, kitchens that use a lot of flour and grease and operate for 16 plus hours a day may see the need to clean this coil more frequently, whereas kitchens that don't use those ingredients regularly and operate maybe 8 hours a day, I'm thinking like a school or something of that nature, you may not need to clean the coil that much. The best practice really is to check the coil about every 3 months is what we recommend. If it's determined that the coil needs cleaning, you can use a coil brush or you can vacuum out the dirt and debris from the coil. You want to kind of avoid using that, the kinds of sprayers that you use to clean your keyboard where it blows air out that way. I'm not a big fan of those unless you're going to, maybe you have significant dirt and debris and you want to use that compressed air to blow it out. But if you blow it through the coil, you're actually blowing it back into the system. So if you have to do that, definitely recommend vacuuming the coil, not only around the coil, but also around the compressor and other cooling parts of the unit so that you get that debris just out of the system in general. Really not a big fan of blowing it back into the system just because it can cause further issues. You want to make sure you pull it out if you can. And they have coil brushes and things like that are available for purchase just on any parts or Amazon, something like that. And so you can see here that we've put a little indicator that it'll take about 15 minutes for this whole process to be completed. Again, reemphasizing how cleaning the coil is the #1 preventative maintenance task. If your coil looks like this, the system cannot receive proper airflow, and this puts too much work on the compressor and can ultimately cause failure. Most manufacturers state in their warranty policy that if the compressor fails due to a dirty condenser coil or a blocked condenser coil, the warranty is voided, and therefore this leaves the operator with a pretty hefty service bill, $800 or more. So we discussed, again, cleaning the unit during shutdown and startup processes, but it's also important to just clean the unit periodically outside of those two activities because you wouldn't want to go the whole year without cleaning the unit. Now, if you're shutting down weekly, that one weekly clean should be fine unless you have a major spill. But, if you're just continuously using this unit and having contents inside, you want to do this periodically just for, food safety and sanitation. So again, we should use a mixture of baking soda and hot water with a soft cloth to clean the unit. And generally you should wipe in the direction of the metal grain when you're cleaning. And as I mentioned too, for the exterior, there are cleaners out there called like Sheila Shine or stainless steel cleaner that are specifically for this type of material, because you really want to avoid these types of cleaners on that kind of equipment. Always, you can always reference. For Charleston, we're going to say, no, don't use these on our units. But if you don't have a Charleston using a different manufacturer, make sure you check what they recommend for cleaning. But this is pretty general. For stainless steel, as I mentioned, my undergrad had a lot of chemistry, so I recognize this. You want to avoid using these harsh chemical cleaners like dish detergent, bleach, lye, or any cleaner that contains chlorides and ammonia. These cleaners will oxidize the metal and cause corrosion. And since refrigeration is essentially heat removal, if you know anything about refrigeration, it's taking heat out. The vapors that come from these cleaners will also be breathed in by the unit and can cause the evaporator coil to corrode, ultimately resulting in a system failure. Even though those coils are coated, I think pretty much everybody in the industry coats those coils to avoid issues. But if you're, something like that, like a chloride or ammonia vapor, over time will eventually cause it to corrode. Another PM task that you want to do outside of shutting down or recommissioning is you want to check your gaskets. So ensure the fit, function, and cleanliness so that the doors of the unit have a proper seal and you avoid the buildup of dirt, mold, and bacteria. Again, you see we have a little time frame up here. Takes about 10 minutes just to ensure form, fit, and function. So now we've done the PM do's and don'ts. Keep your questions in your mind for later on in the session if there's something that I didn't address. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about some sanitation solutions that are out there. I know we're all concerned after this year about the spread of germs, the spread of illness, cross-contamination, things of that nature. So it's really a good idea to look and see what your manufacturers have to offer for your equipment. So for Charleston, we have something we call the Easy Open Foot Pedal that's available with our upright units. So this ergonomically positioned foot pedal basically enables the operators to open the cabinet by pressing the lever with their foot, obviously. And so it's for no-touch door openings. So maybe the operator's hands are full and they can't, they don't want to drop a pan or make a big mess on the floor. That foot pedal allows them to just open those with their hands full and make sure that there's no cross-contamination there. Also reduces the amount of frequently touched surfaces so that, you can mitigate the risk of spreading germs, right? So that's really what that's for there. The next solution that Charleston has to offer are easy clean gaskets. So these gaskets are special and they are sanitizer friendly. So I mentioned before on the actual unit, on the outside and the inside, the metal parts, don't use the bleach, don't use those chlorine-based cleaners. However, on our gaskets, the material is special enough that you can actually use bleach just on the gasket portion, and it's not going to cause it to break down like you might see on a standard PVC gasket. So that is really unique there. The way that the gasket is shaped too, it's not an accordion style. It's kind of got one bellow there, so it's really easy to just get that dirt and grime that's stuck in there as opposed to having to deal with like 3 different accordion bellows going on. And then with our lab testing, it also showed that these gaskets last about 4 times longer than your traditional PVC gaskets. So we talked about doing like a quarterly check on these gaskets. So depending on operator use and environment, these gaskets can last quite a while. So hopefully that'll help save, customers money at the end of the day for gasket replacement. The last sanitation solution I want to discuss is the use of glass doors. So this is pretty common in some arenas that I've been in. Solid doors, you see that a lot, but a glass door does have an added benefit there because you can easily view those contents. So this hopefully will allow, less door openings. So the door is less touched, right? That's what we want to do, is avoid as many touches as possible. So if you're able to easily grab your content, see what you need and easily grab your contents, you're not opening that door as much and those surfaces are being touched less frequently. So with Charleston, we have glass doors available, on pass-throughs, on reach-ins, on roll-ins, all of those things. So that may just be something that, it's something that we've had for a really long time, but now it can apply to the situation to help people, kind of remain conscious of spreading of germs and stuff like that in the kitchen. Again, now it's time for a poll question.
Thanks, Haley. Oh, really great stuff, especially the foot pedal. I imagine that would be so useful right now for a lot of operators. So we're going to do our second and final poll question. Be sure to participate using the Q&A widget. Your answer is going to help us understand what's most important to you. So the question is, what type of equipment or parts attributes are you most focused on now? Enhanced safety features, cleaning and sanitation, mobile storage, equipment to reduce time in the kitchen, or the need for staff, or seals and gaskets? Please go ahead and cast your vote now. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about. Haley, I really appreciated your note on the glass doors also. You know, that has to make things so much easier just to see at a glance. And by not opening it and having to look at the contents, you're saving all that energy in the box as well.
Right. I mean, how many times do we walk up to the refrigerator in our own homes and we just open the door and stand there and look, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Especially if you have teenagers.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for participating. So it looks like cleaning and sanitation are what you're most focused on now. Absolutely. Very good. Okay, and then the closely behind are seals and gaskets as well. So excellent. The content you're presenting today will definitely help answer some of that. So go ahead, Haley.
Awesome. So one of the poll answers or the answer to the poll that we just had was about, you know, reducing time in the kitchen. And that may be beneficial for some on this call, especially if you're, you know, working with staff shortages, or, you know, maybe people are more on leave because of COVID. I've heard a whole host of things, largely within the K-12 arena. You know, maybe looking for ways to work smarter and not harder, and maybe not have as many people in the kitchen. So I wanted to talk about blast chilling just a little bit, because this may help save time for operators in the kitchen if they're suffering from any of those issues at the moment. So what is a blast chiller exactly? It's a special refrigerator designed to take hot food and turn it quickly, safely into cold food. So what I see out a lot is folks will want to take just a regular freezer and use it as a blast chiller. So they'll take food directly from the oven and they'll put it in a freezer to cool it down quickly. And that's not really a good practice. That's not a good practice for the food, and that's not a good practice for the unit. So blast chilling is really going to be the most effective way to safely cool food directly from the oven. Successful cook chilling is part art. So you want your desired end results, the yield, the labor savings, the integrity of the contents that you've cooked. You want it to stay the same taste, consistency, those types of things. And also you want to make sure the food is safe, you know, first and foremost. It's also part science because we have regulations. Yay, regulations. So food must be chilled within these certain guidelines within a certain amount of time. So it needs to go from 135 to 70 degrees within 2 hours. And then you have 6 hours to get it from 135 to 41 degrees or less. That's 41 to 135 degrees is really what we call a temperature unsafe zone. That's where bacteria is going to proliferate that can cause the food to be unsafe. So what using a blast chiller can do for you, so there's labor savings, and we'll take a look at that. We'll have a visual look at that so you can actually see some numbers. Menu expansion, improved consistency. So when you use a blast chiller as opposed to just letting it kind of cool maybe on the counter and then sticking it in the refrigerator after it hits 70 degrees, you know, you risk it drying out, you risk it being exposed to the air in the kitchen. So with a blast chiller, you will have that improved consistency with the food. It can prevent a bottleneck if you're running into that in the kitchen where there's just one area, which would be cooling the food, right? That you know, you have to wait on. So it's more time, and then it allows for par cooking days in advance. So additionally, one of the things that we always talk about at Charleston is that you know, refrigeration is really about food safety. It's really about preventing the bacteria growth on the food by keeping it at safe temperatures. It's about having those contents last as long as they possibly can. So one of the things that we talk about is how ready-to-eat foods are really the most at risk for potential foodborne illness. So that's, as you see here, the ladies are making up the sandwiches, salad bars, you know, anything that doesn't have to be cooked. So anything that's ready to eat If it's going to be placed into, say, a salad bar or an open air merchandiser, it needs to go in there already at the appropriate temperature. That open air unit is not going to cool it down. So you want to make sure going in, it may maintain it at that 41 degrees or less, but it needs to go in at that temperature. So that's why it may be a safe bet to go ahead and quickly cool it down, those ready to eat foods, before actually placing it into a salad bar or to an open air merchandiser. So the benefits, we can calculate the ROI. You just kind of edit the variable figures here, because we talked about labor savings, we talked about menu expansion, we talked about par cooking days in advance, right? So say you have an operation that runs from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. That would be typical for a school, but I mean, you may have an operation that runs 16 hours. So that would increase that, astronomically. But for this, for example, we'll just leave it at 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 8 hours for 5 days a week. You may need 2 cooks per day. So you get 40 hours for each cook, right? The average cook rate, $15 per hour. Of course, that varies depending on what part of the country you're in. So that total cook cost would be $600 per week for all 5 days for both cooks, 8 hours a day. But if you can cook 5 days of food in only 3 days, you reduce the amount of time you need to be in the kitchen. So you take 16 hours away. So you totally save, about $240 a week, because it's only costing you $360 a week for those cooks' time. So if you're saving $240 a week, that can equate up to over $8,000 annually. So here's a nice little chart that kind of helps explain it a little bit better. So without cook chill, say you need 150 servings a day. That's a pretty good amount for what I see in my line of work. It's definitely more in probably a lot of different areas of the market. So you need 150 servings, you have to cook 150 servings, and then you have to serve 150 servings. So if you use cook chill, you can go ahead and cook. You can make bulk batches, right? And you can go ahead and cook those. So cook 250 servings at a time, 3 days a week. And then you can blast chill that and then save them for those other 2 days. And then just reheat and serve when you're ready to do that. So you're eliminating 2 days of work. Let me pull this up here. So yeah, you're eliminating 2 days of work, and ultimately saving money, and you're saving time, and you're avoiding those additional 2 people being in the kitchen for those 2 days. They're only in 3 days a week as opposed to being 5 days a week, or maybe they can be used elsewhere that you have a staff shortage, something like that. So blast chilling does provide a lot of benefits when it comes to just trying to manage employees in the kitchen, when trying to manage servings, also wanting to save money, lots and lots of benefits. And I think, ultimately the best benefit is being able to cool foods in the safest manner possible. So yep, the cook chill system can save $240 per week, over $8,000 annually. If you do more than this on a daily basis or a weekly basis, the savings will be even greater. So here's actually what cooking 40% more food really looks like. So without cook chill, you're only able to do 5 pans, but using cook chill, you can do up to 7 pans. And additionally, you have those extra 2 pans for the 2 days that you need to serve. And that's really all I have to talk about. Are there any questions or concerns or anything I didn't address?
Yeah, thanks, Haley, for all those great takeaways. There's lots of good lessons there. I'd like to invite all of you out in the audience to definitely submit your questions. We have some time, and I see a bunch have already come in, Haley, so we'll get to those in just a moment. Let's see, how about, before I go, I just want to make sure to point out to everybody that you will be getting a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. So that'll be really helpful to have those notes. So let's see, Haley, from Victor, he says, is there something I can add to our Trolson Reach-In refrigerators and freezers that will track when the units were cleaned, the planned maintenance service? I'm struggling with my teams not performing the planned maintenance service on the units every 3 months.
So we did have something, and it's kind of an alarm that'll say clean the condenser coil. This is something that would show up on our IntelliTrawl, and I believe it's on our control now. I'll have to double check that. But as far as if you're talking about cleaning the condenser coil, then yeah, that's something that you should be alerted to. As far as cleaning like the inside and the outside of the unit, not anything of that nature. I would just, recommend definitely laying out a good PM schedule for that, and just, having them stick to it. But as far as cleaning the condenser coil, yeah, that's something that you could be alerted to, but it's really good to just have a PM schedule set up anyway.
Okay, that helps. Christian would like to know, does Charleston have a self-cleaning unit?
No, we do not have a self-cleaning unit. I'm assuming you're talking about maybe where it sprays on the inside and cleans. It does not do that. We do have what we call, in reference to the condenser coil, on our spec line uprights, we have what we call our Stay Clear condenser. So what that is, it's a finless coil. It just has more tubing that goes through it, so the heat transfer is still the same, the airflow is still the same. It's just a finless coil. So if it does get dirty and debris does get stuck on it, it's not going to block that airflow if you forget to clean it. So that is one offer that we do have. What we have found is that for self-cleaning coils that we have seen out in the marketplace, that's another component that's there to break. Whereas we've kind of gone retro with our Stay Clear condenser, and we've just taken the PM out, essentially, instead of having another piece in there doing the job for us. But yeah, as far as self-cleaning, like on the inside that I know I've seen in some pieces of equipment, no, we don't have anything like that.
Okay. Patty would like to know, can the foot pedal be purchased separately to add to an existing unit?
Not at this time. That is something that we played around with, especially considering what we've dealt with the pandemic. So just stay tuned for more on that. That may be something that we're looking at. But right now, no, we need to be ordered at the time of the unit purchased and it'll be installed at the factory.
Okay. DJ wants to know, what is your recommendation for cleaning a condenser coil with grease buildup?
With grease buildup? That's one of those things, like if you can keep nitrogen on hand to clean. I actually have this written down in my notes because I thought that might come up. But again, using the brush to help kind of break that up, standard tools, non-corrosive cleaner, and nitrogen to clean the condenser coil if needed. So yeah, that's something that I would recommend.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had to reference my notes. I was like, I know these questions will come up.
No problem. Thank you, everybody, for sending in such great questions. I have quite a few here. Kevin would like to know, we have filter media over the coils on all equipment, and it's replaced quarterly. How often would you recommend cleaning the coils with filter media installed?
Okay, so yeah, you have a filter in front of the coil. So I guess when you're changing those, because we already just recommend checking that coil every quarter. If you're already replacing them every quarter, just go ahead and take a peek back there and see if they need to be changed, or if it needs to be cleaned as you're changing the filter media.
Okay. Jeff would like to know, what's the difference in the R value of glass doors compared to non-glass doors?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. This is from Jeff. He wants to know, what's the difference in the R value of glass doors compared to non-glass doors?
The R value. I might have to ask about that one. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is the insulating factor. That's the insulating factor. Sorry, I'm getting intel.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that is, what the difference is, but I'll have to look.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I think we have time for a few more. Nicole would like to know, does the condensation pan need to be cleaned and emptied every 3 months or just when shutting down?
I would say just when shutting down, because with most self-contained units, you have that condensate pan and it has a hot gas loop, at least with Charleston, and that's what's going to evaporate the condensate. So as long as it's running, you shouldn't have an issue. You may run into situations where if you're in an extreme humid environment, you may see some overflow there. We have solutions for that. Because I mean, it's physics, we can only beat it so much, right? For remote units, yeah, that's a different story. But yeah, for just in general, I would say everyday condensate pans, you shouldn't have to empty it unless you're shutting down or you're in some sort of extreme environment that we need to take a look at.
Okay. Nicole says, thank you for answering her question. Let's see. Jason would like to know what causes the door gasket to fold over itself on the door of a walk-in freezer on the hinge side. But Charleston doesn't do walk-ins, right?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I'm not sure on that.
Okay. Haley, I was wondering, what are some of the problems that you've encountered when it comes to planned maintenance schedules for Charleston equipment?
So what I've really run into is that there is not a plan. That's mainly what I run into. You know, as I have seen, and I mentioned at the beginning, is that, you know, refrigeration is really, it's something that runs 24/7, but it can be ignored until something goes wrong. So I think a PM schedule is really important to have, and let's have a plan here. So if you don't have a planned maintenance schedule, go ahead and create one. It's definitely more critical now than ever. Having that PM schedule is going to save you time at the end of the day, right? Potentially, if the unit just goes kaput, right, because there wasn't a PM, then you have that downtime, and you could potentially lose the contents in the refrigerator or freezer. So having that schedule is going to save you time. It's going to save you money. You're going to be able to catch anything that is having an issue earlier on before it becomes a really big problem. So, I mean, I kind of think of it like taking care of your car, right? You want to get your oil changed, you want to wash it, you want to do all of the things you need to do to it to make sure that it runs efficiently for a very long time. It's the same thing with your refrigeration equipment. So go ahead and create that plan. There's not a whole lot to do. We actually, I have a handout that we can share that just gives you kind of the key steps and how long it's going to take and how to do it. Because it's really not a whole lot. I mean, you just want to make sure you take care of it so it lasts a long time and you avoid a major repair, you know, down the road. And I would say too, if you work on like a yearly budget and you have kind of an equipment budget that you're working on, I would just include 2% of your equipment budget for scheduled maintenance or repairs. You just want to be prepared for any unexpected circumstances, especially in these days. When we're all kind of wary on things are going on and how, you know, how we're going to serve our customers to the best of our ability. So yeah, definitely include, if you're doing an equipment budget, include a little bit of that money to make sure that you're covering preventative maintenance if you don't have somebody on site to do it, right? If you have to call a company, and also if there's any repairs that need to be made, you can make them and not have to worry about where you're going to get the funding from.
Anything else that you want to be sure to mention today, Haley?
Just everybody stay positive. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Charleston or to anyone on this call today. We know we're here to help. We want to make your kitchen processes efficient. We want your contents to stay safe. We want your patrons to be happy. So please just, you know, if there's any questions, concerns, how we can better help you, let us know.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Haley. And everybody on the audience, want to make sure that you see here, we've got the website that you can visit for Partstown. And we also have Haley's contact information. I see that there are quite a few questions that we weren't able to get to today. So definitely reach out to Haley via that email there, and we can get those questions answered for you. So thank you so much again to our sponsor, Partstown. And I highly encourage you to participate in our post-webinar evaluation. Your responses are definitely going to help us shape future events. So thank you so much for your time today, and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.